Good afternoon, everyone. It's time to start the meeting. Now, I declare the opening of the International Symposium called Is Humanity Retrograding, co-organized by Japan Association of the Global Loan, Chubu University, Central Japan SDGs platform. The subtitle is Where is the Future of the Planet to Move Forward from Asian Perspective? Now, I am Kunihiro Fukui, serving as the Vice President of the Chubu University, representing the organizer. This symposium is commemorating the 50th anniversary of the publication of the Limits to the Growth, which the Club of Roma has requested Dr. Dennis Meadows of MIT to publish. And also, in the same year, 1972, Declaration for the Human Environment was made from the UN Conference on the Human Environment. Commemorating these two, we are now holding this symposium co-organized by Club of Rome Japan, Chubu University, and the Central Japan SDGs platform. Now, first of all, the UNCRD is one of the co-organizers of this symposium, and UNCRD belongs to DESA, or Department of Economic of Social Affairs of the United Nations. From that DESA, I'd like to invite Professor Amson Shibanda, who is in charge of the SDGs. He's going to give us a video message. Now, this conference is simultaneously interpreted. Please choose your language from the bottom of this Zoom face. Now, the video message, please.
I'm delighted to join you on the occasion of the Club of Japan Symposium. Is Humanity Retrograding? Turning point of Western civilization in the 21st century and traditional knowledge of Japan and Asia, that is jointly organized by Chubu University and the Central Japan SDGs platform. This is an important commemorative event for the Club of Rome Japan, as it is organized in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Club of Rome's first report, The Limits to Growth, that was published in 1972. It was the warning bell that if current trends such as population growth and environmental pollution continue, the growth on the planet will reach its limits within 100 years. The United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs has been providing substantive support on population and development issues. In 1972, the first United Nations Conference on the Human Environment was organized in Stockholm, Sweden. The theme of the conference, Only One Earth, is well known as an expression of the fact that environmental problems have become a global issue common to all humankind. This year, Stockholm Plus 50 was held and declared a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility, our opportunity, in order to raise awareness about the importance of protecting our planet. Despite all the commitments made to protect the environment, the world is facing a major climate crisis and disasters. This is attributed to unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. We therefore need political will and alternative ideas to overcome today's interrelated challenges, namely the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, and conflicts. According to UN DESA's World Population Prospects 2022, the global population is projected to reach 9.7 billion in 2050. Achieving the 23rd Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, including eradicating poverty in the context of rapid population growth in some least developed countries, as well as climate change, disease pandemics, and other challenges, puts additional pressure on already strained resources. At the same time, the growing population of Asia and Africa also presents opportunities to harness a demographic dividend, but this requires investing in human capital development, particularly in quality education and healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, in this regard, the United Nations Center for Regional Development, located in Nagoya, Aichi, Japan, is an important part of UNDESA and contributes more than before by utilizing its accumulated experiences, knowledge, and partnerships with the developing countries, especially in Asia and Africa, through their research and training programs. I would like to thank the Club of Rome, Japan, and Chubu University for organizing this event to discuss some of the pressing challenges the world is facing. Tackling these challenges will contribute to achieving the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. I trust the partnership between the UN CRD, Club of Rome Japan, Chubu University, the Central Japan SDGs platform, all of which are located in Aichi, Japan, as well as the Japanese government, will continue to thrive. Such partnerships contribute to a more harmonious development of the whole world in an era of growing Asia. I thank you.
And now, I'd like to invite Professor Tomoyo Nonaka, full member of the Club of Rome, to start the symposium. Professor Nonaka used to serve as the main caster of NHK. In TV Tokyo, she was on the front line of reporting about the international trends. She's an eminent journalist, as you know. And also, she then became the chair of the Sanyo or Asahi Beer, being appointed for the many important positions in the global companies. And she said that the key to the success in the global market is to produce the products of a least environmental impact. And also, she was on the advisory board of many different governmental organizations or the committees. She is now leading the NPO Gaia initiative, and she is giving the message that the human also are the part of the Gaia, which is the living planet for us all. And also, she is the visiting professor at Chubu University. So I will give a microphone to Ms. Nonaka.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And from here, on behalf of the Japanese Association of the Club of Rome, and actually in the world, there's only about 100 full members of Club of Rome, and I'll be speaking from this role. For the younger generation, when you hear about this term, the limits of growth, you may think, what is it about? You may think that there's a certain limit, of course, to the growth of your height, but it's about if this trend that we are in now continues, the world will be in a critical state. That was the report that was issued by the Club of Rome 50 years ago. And maybe some of you have read this. At the first Club of Rome Japan Symposium, we again had this symposium in Chubu University 2 years ago, and we talked about from COVID, what should we learn and what should be our target post-COVID for the economic and social state. That was covered in the first symposium. Today will be the second of the symposium series, and you can see the flyer on my hand. Thle, there was a big a screen that you were seeing. The title is quite provocative, Is Humanity Retrograding? With this topic, we'd like to have a 2-session program. We'll have a break in between, but in the first session, we want to think about where is the direction the planet is headed toward for. In the first symposium, when we talked about post-COVID, economy, politics, I think the past trend was that we accelerated our growth toward higher and higher levels. But when COVID hit our society, we were told to stay home and freeze our activities. Then we found that the environment has turned clean. We have seen the dolphins coming back to the Venetian Sea. So that gave us a moment to ask ourselves. And we again recalled the question raised 50 years ago. The very Asian down-to-earth type of values, we thought that it might help us to think about the solutions for our future. So with that, I'd like to introduce the person next to me, the chairman of the board and chancellor of Chubu University, Professor Atsuo Iyoshi. So first of all, Professor Iyoshi, thank you for providing us this opportunity to use your university to have this symposium again. My heartfelt appreciation I'd like to express first of all. So coming to this topic today, is humanity retrograding? Actually, this is an expression that I have pulled out from you when we had a conversation. And now let's look at who's sitting in front of us. Here's Professor Hayashi. He is also the boss of the Japan Club of Rome Japan. And he is the executive committee member and president of the Japanese Association. He's quite an important person. He's sitting there quite casually, but actually he's a very important person. And next to Professor Hayashi is Mr. Iyo. As a journalist, he had served as moderator in the first symposium. He is the editorial writer of the Chunichi newspaper. Now, looking across the world, don't you think that there's a lot of question raised and we have a lot of doubts about how we have come to this state? We're not able to be confident of continuing this accelerated pace. Well, it's actually 50 years after this question was raised if we are able to continue the way we are operating. So that itself is fine. But if it is that we are retrograding, then at least probably we can say that we are kind of in an idle phase. We're trying to take a pause a moment. And then the Stockholm Declaration was made, and then we're more aware of the global warming. And we were saying that we are at a transition point with the Human Rights Declaration. We're saying that we're at a point of change point, a transition point, but we haven't turned around yet. This is a milestone, the 50th anniversary. So we are very much aware of the question posed 50 years ago. And I think this is due to and thanks to Club of Rome that we're able to think of this report that was issued. The Silent Spring, Rachel Carson has been a bestseller, and that was also issued in 1972. And in this 5 decades after the Silent Spring, the final chapter talked about a separate path. That was the final chapter in the book. So we talked about being in the transition period, talked about having to take a different path, but we have now seen 50 years pass without much difference. So a certain newspaper has said that after the Stockholm Declaration, it's 5 decades, it's an anniversary. So they've created a big article, and their title was that this title is still valid, and it should become, for us, it's ideal that this kind of declaration becomes obsolete, saying that, yes, we had those problems in the past, let's put it in our archive. But actually, it is still a fresh and a very relative topic now today. So that's a big problem for us. And from the perspective as a journalist, you feel that too? Yes. As a perspective, from a journalist perspective, I could say that is exactly true. So how do you think, Dr. Yoshi? Well, the topic of this symposium, when we were discussing how to decide this, you said that you picked it up from what I said and decided that we'll be talking about this with humanity is retrograding. And if I can talk a little bit, yes, of course. Actually, if you ask me if humanity is evolving or retrograding, I'll say we are retrograding. And that is one big reason is because the invasion to Ukraine by Russia. They're in the same ethnic group, but decided to invade Ukraine and to kill the same ethnic group people. And also, not only that, President Putin is using the nuclear weapons that they hold as a threat. And the world is not able to take any significant measures against President Putin. So this weak state of the world we cannot call as we have evolved. And in addition to that, in destroying the civilization of this on this planet, it's said that as if we have 100 or 200 nuclear weapons, that will be enough to destroy the whole civilization. How many nuclear weapons do you think is on Earth? Actually, there is more than 10,000 nuclear weapons. So it means that if President Putin decides that and presses the button for nuclear weapons, it will instantly proliferate nuclear weapons and contaminate the world. That is the concern, the grave concern that we have now. And it is causing a lot of anxiety and sadness to the world. Also, until quite recently, the pandemic of COVID had been dominated the world. And next, it might be the nuclear pandemic that will attack the world. So the question I am having these days is, isn't there a path where we can solve peacefully from a political side? I think that we should have something like the United Nations to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons immediately. So now, whether we talk about retrograding, then the other side, the concept will be evolving. So in order to evolve, the most latest technology will be the nuclear fusion, nuclear fission technology. And we were commending that technology very much. But now, when there are these people thinking that they want to kill as many people possible, this great technology is becoming a weapon for them and a measure for them. So that is the nuclear fusion will be one of your expertise. And this Chubu University, you are now having various activities for creative learning. And under the Ministry of Education, you don't just abide to their guidance, but you go beyond their guidance and try to pursue how humanity can live in affluence in a non-conventional way. And as you do this exploration, I think SDGs has also become very important, and it has become more like a common terminology in the world. From your position, what kind of methodologies do you think is usable to achieve that kind of non-conventional affluent society? Well, thinking about the state-of-the-art technology that you've mentioned, it does take time to actually implement those technology, but it is something that we have to continue to work on and realize. But on the other hand, being in this kind of situation, one maybe hope that we have or the silver lining is the SDGs. And I say that because the very last 17th goal is partnership. So that is very relevant to the current state, to the isolation and divide created by the pandemic and the war. Actually, we can deal with that through partnership. And through partnership, I think SDGs is spreading out more in the world, and this is a happy phenomenon for me to watch. So in this Chubu economic region, you are conducting a academic gathering of sustainability. Yes, I think you are a great leader here. And so against this war between of Russia against the Ukraine, you said that there is no international organization that is able to be effective on solving this issue. What do you think of that? Yes, it's very disappointing. I think there should be some kind of a collaboration around the global countries to take leadership and to have an initiative to solve this state quickly. But as you have just said, we don't see that kind of move. And I believe we can rely on to hear some advice from the panelists that is waiting today. Well, the nuclear fission and fusion technology is used to kill people now, but actually the nuclear power generation was meant for the peaceful use and for the humankind prosperity. But that is both sides are causing the negative impacts to us. So then having an international leadership, no global leadership is being initiated. And so in about the state, well, Professor Hayashi, you are thinking about the future activities of the Club of Rome, Japan. And so for you, as president of this association, what do you think about the direction that the planet should take? You can talk about the technology side, or you can talk from the academia perspective. What will be the ideal future goal for academia? What do you think? Can you give us some thoughts? Well, as Io-san has Dr. Io has mentioned, when we asked about why is this all happening, this is a very important question for us to ask. The Club of Rome has issued that report 50 years ago, The Limits to Growth. And in there, they have said that population is growing too much, and therefore the foods and the resources will be in shortage. Club of Rome has been from 50 years ago had predicted that probably wars would break out because of this state of the limit that we are at for the growth. And after that, science has developed, technology has developed. And another thing that we had not known and has happened is the climate change and global warming. So the relationship between the atmosphere and the heat is now more clear. And the Club of Rome is very much working on the economic and political sides of these issues. But there's something that we should work on more, I believe. And that would be the role of Club of Rome Japan, I believe. It's about how you look at things, how you understand things. For example, I think we will be hearing about this more today, but in Japan and in other countries, the way of thinking is that we are made to exist because of nature, thanks to nature. And especially in Japan, we do see this concept anywhere, but then in Japan, we believe that there's deity everywhere and in all sort of forms of nature. This kind of belief still exists strongly, but not just in Japan, but also in countries like India, Thailand. For these countries as well, there are these unique, universal concept existing. So if we can utilize those, if we can share that more broadly in the world, that may be helpful. I'm not just focusing on Asia. I'm not saying that Asia has all the answers, but I'm saying that maybe there's things, elements in Asia that the world can benefit from. And that is why we decided to hold this symposium today. Thank you. In the first symposium, we talked about the fusion of the East and West, also science and technology and nature, and shifting the way of thinking, not to be taking countermeasures after seeing a problem. But it's more about a change in concept, to think from a different perspective, to think more from an Eastern way, so to say. And so then we can think about and reflect about how we have grown our concept, what is the environment that we have been nurtured in, and also to think about the definition of what it means to be evolving, what it means to be retrograding. If we can gather that all together, I think we can think about what it means to take the next step, and maybe we can make a proposal of like efficient next step. So that kind of specific idea, it will be great if we can come to a conclusion like that. And I'm writing short of time, but Io-san, Professor Pabel is a Nobel laureate and saying that there is a Neanderthal genes in all of us. So from a time frame, the Homo sapiens and Neanderthals is now a very hot topic. And maybe when we think about the time of the Neanderthals, the humans may be more happier in those times. Don't you think? Well, that might be one possibility, is even looking at the NK dramas of before. Well, we don't have to go up to the Neanderthal ages, but at least when you think about the affluence or sufficiency of human life, maybe the old days we were much happier. That's kind of a nostalgia that I feel. And I guess it's the other side of asking the question, are the humans living in a more affluent or sufficient world? We're saying that the world has become much closer with the internet. We are now changing the way of work. But even with all of these efforts, we always are saying that we don't have time, we don't have the job, we don't have money. Now we're short of even food. So what does this all mean? And that's a question that I don't have an answer for. And maybe the answer is to look back 5 decades ago and rethink about the proposition that was issued by the Club of Rome in the limits of growth. So we are not at a goal, but we are at the transition phase of the SDGs, and the Club of Rome, what they have proposed, has turned into a form that is called SDGs, and it is sitting right in front of us. And this will be the silver lining, as it was mentioned before. So this sense of crisis about this abnormal weather conditions. And in Japan, we talk about this food crisis or food waste and issues too. And in the past, so the SDGs used to be the Millennium Goals, and it didn't really talk about the population at that time. But SDGs, well, it was not really, did not become a shared understanding or shared as a concept. But SDGs is known very widely. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to really go through this transition change and change ourselves. SDGs may provide us that opportunity for us to really change as a trigger. That is my expectation. Thank you very much. So coming back to Dr. Iyoshi. So as chancellor of this university, can I ask you, I think, thinking about new forms of the university of academia. So when if the planet Earth, the population is increasing more, but Japan population is decreasing, especially under age 18. And even with the 2018 data, the private universities, there is not enough students to fill the opening of the schools. But in your head, in your mind, Chancellor, I think you're thinking about creating and developing a new community, and the academia, there is an academia project to have the academia or university right in the core of that new community. So can you explain that or advertise that? Well, Chubu University was actually initiated in Surumai. It's in the center of Nagoya City, in the Tokaido Road and in the very close to the Nagoya Center. There's a lot of nature there with green parks too. So actually the founder had started the school, Chubu University, in that location initially. So in that sense, we think we started right in the middle of Nagoya City. And it have moved to the current situation. But that original location, what it is it's just a parking lot. Oops. So one reason is that we were not able to secure enough budget because of COVID and other reasons. Therefore, we have turned it into a parking lot. And I think that it actually, because it's our founding location, I want to develop that as the center of one of our academia activities and have a collaboration with the neighboring community so that it can contribute to the future development of the community. So what I heard is that in France as well, the young generations, there are think tanks that support the entrepreneurs, the young generation. And I think Aichi is a location like that's called the Aichi organization in France. And so your Aichi prefecture is going to have a collaboration with this university. And can I say the name right now? And SoftBank is the private company that is working together as a partner. So when you talk about community development, then sometimes it's about just securing the budget to create something flashy like a golden dolphin on the castle, but not that, but you're trying to gather people and to create some sparks to develop the community. I think I heard that is the big concept behind this project. Well, we call it the Station I because we're in Aichi prefecture, then we call it I, and also it's a sister company of Station Aichi in France, and the Aichi prefectural governor is taking the lead. In Aichi Prefecture, there are major companies like Toyota and companies that are strong in making machinery. So in the past, we have proliferated this, benefited from those companies excelling. But now we're going to the next stage and thinking about what is it that can be our core to develop. And we want to share the learnings with other regions and countries. And that is going to be Station I, which is going to be at our center. And we are getting much older, but so the focus target is not us, the older generation, it's the younger generation. We want to gather the younger generation there so that a spark can be created to have a new growth in this region. And then it happens that Chubu University started there. Well, in Japan, we had the great economic growth, and up to now, there has been a lot of initiatives to develop the regional and rural areas too. And I think you're adding a new perspective to do a different version of that kind of community building and development. So I thought that there's a lot of possibilities and there's a lot of great dreams. So that's why I asked the chancellor to talk about that project. Well, anyway, now various regions, there are the many very issues in each regions and countries, and we have time until 6:30 right now. So now my suggestion is that can we ask Dr. Iyoshi to go to a different seat, and we'll be like to involve all the panelists and receive some presentation by all the professors that he is here today. So now 50 years ago, once again, Club of Rome issued a report titled The Limits of Growth to alert us about this crisis of the earth. And at this year of the 50th anniversary, I wanted to have the symposium think about the future. Of course, the nuclear technology is a state-of-art technology. We have believed that it is that will help us and that we can benefit from, but it is used in a other way that we didn't think about. So we have to change our perspective. We have to change our mindset and to think about understand what the state we are in. I want to say no to the question, is humanity retrograding, with the arguments by all the professors. And that's why we are holding this symposium. And the first batter up will be Professor Tsujimoto. And each of the profiles of the professors, we are not able to have time to explain it, but people who are watching through Zoom, you will see it on the screen. And if you have a pamphlet in front of you, you will have a page that explains the detailed profile of each of members. So I'll skip the profiles and just go to Dr. Tsujimoto. So the very important professor in Japan. The California, we're about the same size of an island as California state. So in what kind of cultural background we have come to use this terminology of animosity of the deity and all living things or in nature, thinking that this is a strong culture for us. Maybe if we look back and think about it further, it might provide some suggestions for the way to think toward the future. So can I ask you to give us some explanation?
Thank you very much for your introduction. So the theme which I was given is, actually, my expert is the philosophy in the Edo period. And based on that, I was thinking what kind of presentation I should give to you based on the theme which you have given to me. What I'm thinking is connected lives. Lives. Birth. What is the meaning of those? Where did the lives comes from? That's number one. And number two is, so the lives exist on Earth, and what is the meaning of lives? We would like to consider this from the viewpoint of the Confucianism, including Japan, China, and other countries. And from that perspective, I think we can find the direction of the answer. So what is the meaning of the birth? So in East Asia, there is a key philosophy. So I would like to explain from the key philosophy perspective. In the Mother Nature is filled with ki. Tenchi Shizen in Japanese is Mother Nature in English, including the nature of the universe. This is a Mother Nature, and the Mother Nature is filled with ki. Then what is ki? So in our daily lives, we use so many words include ki, like genki, energy, and the others. Ki is intangible, colorless, odorless. So when we separate things, it can be separated into elements, but ki is not separable into elements. It's fluid, and that's the source of life. So ki is the energy of life. And that ki is filled in space of nature, and ki is always moving. Ki will not stop. Ki, while moving, there is the dynamic moving and the silent moving. Through such motion, ki sometimes gather. When ki gather, life will born. So life is the gathering of the ki. So the life is the aggregate of ki. So genki is the starting of life. So ki is the origin of the life. And in Japanese words, we use, are you genki? Are you full of energy? But the ki is the starting of life. And the key of life is living. So what is the meaning of living? So life form, including us, is living inside the nature or living in the ocean of ki. May I ask you a question? So are you talking about something spiritual? I think some people misunderstand that. So in the female body, we have the monthly things. So the monthly or moon is going around the earth. And then in the oceans, creature, they don't have any time, but they started to bear the egg. And then even the Japanese women's period things, it is related to sun. It's invisible, and some people think it is controlled by the pill, but the earth is moving. And the sun, which is the center of rotation, the sun is moving. And that space actually exchanging the energy. And that is the phenomena which old people called genki or energy. So from the physical viewpoint and from the academic viewpoint, the people's living is supported by this ki or energy. Is my understanding correct? Yes, what you have said is correct. I try to explain from the physics viewpoint, but physiology or physics is something rational. So I try to explain from the rational viewpoint, but what you have said is correct. So the female's body is correct. Female body is connected to the nature, and all the creatures are connected to the nature. And for example, my life is filled with ki, so aggregate of ki. And aggregate of ki is keep on moving. You have to eat. If you are hungry, you will lose energy. So the Chinese herbal medicine is also explaining about ki, and that body is connected to the ocean of ki. So how it is connected is something I would like to talk. We have the philosopher Ekiken Kaipada in Edo period using his word. So it is very important to maintain, keep, and the antonym is reduce, and circulate or turn, and nurture. So if you do not think, energy will be lost and lost. So when ki is stagnated, people will develop disease. So maintain and circulate and nurture. So nurture or nourish means you gain energy by eating and drinking. So you eat meat, rice, and vegetables, creatures of the nature in the space or in the universe. We are exchanging ki. When breathing stops, you will die. When you cannot eat, you will die. Which means connection of ki, when it is stopped, people will die. That is the kind of ki. So what we can learn from that using the Confucianism words, oneness of the universe. All the lives consist of ki, and all the lives are connected with ki. People, dogs, cats, what are the difference? What are the difference? Although they are consist of ki. Human ki is the purest ki. I understand that. So people's ki's quality is high. That means the mind and heart can be generated. And the ki in the dog and cats, they don't have mind. Dog has a loyalty to the owner, but the regarding the dogs, siblings, and parents, the connection is not so thick. But if you're talking about humans, humans are connected to so many peoples, and the humans have the feeling of love. And such love of human is something inherent. And if the quality of ki is high, that means richness of mind and heart. And if that's the case, you can have the love for others. So that is a 5 right and 5 virtues from the Confucianism words. Ekiken Kaibara is famous for the classic book talking about the nourishment. So retaining and circulating and nurturing in the human world, it's about eating, drinking, and breathing. Vegetables are the lives, and people intake such lives. And therefore, all the lives are connected. That is oneness of the universe. And this is something we should not forget. So we are getting grace from the natures. So we have to repay such kindness. Now, from the genome viewpoint, in the 21st centuries, genome was decoded finally. And the genomes of humans and chimpanzees are 98.8% identical. From the genome viewpoint, the human and chimpanzees are almost the same creatures. Of course, that difference is very big. That's what Matsuda professor said. And the rice also have lives. And with human, about 40% of genome is in common. From this viewpoint, the 4.6 billion years since the birth of the Earth, and 3.8 billion years since the birth of life. Life on Earth has been changing its shape and form while continuing to sustain life over a long period of time. Genome viewpoint and what is said is the same. So the connected lives is very important from the Confucianism viewpoint. So even the time when there was no DNA analysis, we can consider the positioning of human. So from the physiology viewpoint, it seems like we are focusing on the positioning of human. But from the Confucianism, the connections with natures and humans is the focus. Humans connected to other lives. So the human can stabilize itself, parents, siblings, husband and wife, men and women, friends, and community, regional community or workplace community or nation community. That is a 5 rights and 5 virtue of Confucianism. So people are living based on 5 rights and 5 virtue. Such ability had been given from the nature. And if people live based on that, that can stabilize the society. Using the Ekiken Kaibara words, this phenomenon can be explained by serving nature. Nature gives birth to all the things, and all the things will be nurtured and loved. And then if that's the case, when the people come to Earth, it is receiving the grace from the nature. So people have to say thank you to the nature. And people have to repay the kindness to the nature. And that is the way of life based on the 5 rights and the 5 virtue. So there is an order of the nature. And people are connected from the time scale and the horizontal axis. So time axis is that 3.8 billion years connection, and horizontal axis in the same era, people are gaining lives and alive. So it is about the ecosystem. So from the both perspective, people's lives are connected. But recently, we had the pandemic of COVID-19. So from the social science viewpoint, COVID-19 separate the people. And that is actually the retrograding of the evolution of the humanity. So that's a serious problem. So we have to overcome this issue. So how we can overcome this issue? And we have to consider from the viewpoint of the relationship of the nature and people. And another point is, so how modern people consider oneself? So ego is the right word. That is individuality or personality. Based on ego, all the people expanded oneself. And from that viewpoint, people tried to control others. So looking at the world from the ego, but from the viewpoint of East Asia philosophy, they consider oneself or human from the side of the nature. I use the example of the Confucianisms, but the Buddhism and Shintoism also have the same way of thinking. So how we can cut or break away from the human-centric viewpoint for the world is something we have to consider, and how we can make the world which we can pay respect to the nature and the earth. Thank you very much. Against universe, so we are living in the universe and we try to understand oneself based on the oneness of the universe. Based on the Shintoism, we were taught that we have to respect for the sun. So we pray and we say thank you. But ego or self, if ego is established, we think that is important because the God is watching oneself. So Western way of thinking and Eastern way of thinking is conflicting each other. So what do you think about this? So the individualism establishment is based on one God. Yourself is given from the God. So you have the God behind you, but that existence of the God has become weakening. But in Asia, how to look at ego, how to unify oneself with the nature. That is your oneself. By uniting with the nature, oneself can be liberated. That's the enlightenment. So civilization, so people will conquer nature to establish oneself. That's why we study and we acquire knowledge as weapon. But East way of thinking is different. Ego or oneself will be united with the nature. It's like the Taisetsu Suzuki. It's kind of similar to philosophy of Zen. So this way of thinking and the Western way of thinking is actually totally different. Well, it looks the same, but we have established ourselves already. So we have desire from long time ago. Everybody say we have to kill such desire, but that's not the case. Such ego or oneself, uniting it with nature can be achieved only you have yourself. If you have the right direction, if you have the strong, appropriate ego, you can discipline the society, you can discipline yourself, and you can unite with the nature and society, and you can liberate yourself. Thank you very much. That was the first presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Sisalam, thank you for your reading. Now we talked about what is Japanese and what is Asian, and also Confucianism, and also the development of the learning and the philosophy in Asia and in Japan. we have talked about. But you are from India, you were born in India, you were grown in India. So from that perspective, what do you think about this Asianness or the Asian perspective to talk about the Earth, which is burning at the backside of you? So we'd like to make the future of the Earth better and better. And for that matter, what should be the challenge that we should discuss? Now, please, Dr. Sitaram, thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, Tsujimoto sensei's speech was very interesting, and this is my learning. So in India, I think this is connected to what we have to talk from India. So in India, what is the difference between human and other animals? This question was posed. So we have a heart, we have a mind. That's a difference. How this mind or the heart of the people is established. And the heart comes from food. Because food is coming from the nature. The food is something like a gift from the nature. The food is so important. So we live and we eat and we become healthy through eating. Once we lose the ability to eat, we will die and we will go back to the nature again. So in your own life, how food is used to make your life better? So this is an important question. Now in Indian culture, what to eat has been categorized as a regimen. So that's a part of a philosophy. So what food we can eat to live better, what you would like to avoid. That's a disease. No, disease is called roga in Sanskrit language. So roga or loka, meaning the aging in Japanese language I know. So roga means disease and arogya means the healthy life. So to become arogya, meaning healthy, what we have to eat. What we have to eat is a sattvic food. By consuming the sattvic food, you can be healthy. You can have a good impact on your body. So vegetables or the other food, there is a detailed category. And also the purity of the food ingredients is very important. How you grow the food, how you grow the plant, and in making food available, what kind of people are involved, using what kind of raw materials. So how that food or dishes are created by what kind of people, we have to look at this in details from the perspective of purity, because this is important to keep you healthy. So this is from Sanskrit, yes. So this is the part of the religious teaching, or this is our everyday life philosophy. In the everyday life of the family, you will take care of your food. So you will cook your food as much as possible. What you eat, you create yourself. So in the modern society, is it still like this? Yes, I think so. So dining out, eating outside the home is not good. What you consume in your food, what you cook in your home is better than dining out. And is this the same sentiment of the young people in India? I think so. Compared to the other nations in India, dining out is not recommended or promoted. Still, the Indian people will cook at their home by themselves. And then the next thinking, as I said already by the previous speaker, so far, genes or the genetics, so far, the idea of these things have changed compared to 30 years ago. What you eat and what kind of environment you're surrounded will have an impact on your genes. Now we now have a lifestyle diseases, not just what you eat, but also what you think, what you create from your mind is very important. Now in India, we say that the disease does not come from your body. disease will come from your mind or brain. In your mind, you have a seed of the disease. So to purify your mind, you will take care of your mind very sensitively. So that's the part of the religious teaching. Your religion, you in your everyday life, you will follow this cycle, which follows the cycle of the earth, the moon, and the cycle of the seasons of a year. So every day you will expose yourself to this kind of training. For instance, you go to the river and basing the river, being connected to the nature, or sometimes you go up to the mountains. So with the nature, the oneness with nature is good for you to purify. So in your mind, purify your mind will be promoted by the purified food. So to purify your mind, environment has to be purified also. We are damaging our environment. That means that our life is not pure any further, and we get diseases such as the lifestyle diseases such as the metabolic syndrome. Now, I think this comes before the religious teaching because in Indian culture, this is completely different from the religious teaching. Now, in your case, not just the religious teaching, but also you are following the teaching as the everyday teaching. So it's outside of the religious scope, I think, according to Ikiken Kaibara. So, but this theme is very important. What is the problem of now? We have a traditional way of living in Asia versus the modern industrialized world culture. But in Asia, you're the human beings. You are blessed as being born as a humans because our lives have these cycles of being born and dying. So it's a reverse by karma. So you are now a human being. However, you are now living in the present world, having the past lives. In the past lives, you might have been the animal, but as a good deed, as animals, you are now the human beings in the current life. Now, nobody knows when is going to be your last life. So, in order to be born again as a human in the next life, you have to purify yourself. You have to be connected with the nature. You have to consume the good food. So, how we make a dialogue with the nature, with the food, will give you the hint to be born again in the next life. And I think this is something which is missing from my everyday life because everything is money as of now. The love, or the added value by love, those are not measured by the monetary value. Therefore, this is what we call missing points from the present world. So Indian economy, you are under the colonization of the UK for a long time, and now you're liberated, and you're in the process of democratization. And in that process, recently, well, I'm suffering from the aging now. I try to remember that word, but so you have the Bangalore in India as an IT base. So Indian economy flourishing so much because of the IT development, starting from the Bangalore. And the richer people, the young people are becoming richer and richer, more affluent. So their lives are changing because of this affluence that they have gained. And of course, some go to USA to start a startup company in the IT category, and some people will be very rich now in India. However, in their own mind, deep in their own mind, they maintain their culture. The lives offered instead of money. So you're rich, but you have to make a contribution to the society. So you do your own contribution in your own way. To practice your contribution, you will go a different ways. So as I said by the chairman, Iyoshi, we have to establish this partnership with the society, so to say. And we have many unsolved problems in the world. So the Asian way of doing the philanthropy is now capturing attention. It's not that you will give money because you're rich. While you're still poor, still you will donate your money. So being rich is not the condition for you to make a contribution to the society. You have time to offer to the people, you have an idea, you have your wisdom to be shared with other people. It's not just about the money. So without using your money, you can make a contribution. And also, you can do so many things free of charge. For instance, my father was a high school teacher. So sometimes he was giving the lessons to the students free of charge without being paid. But sometimes, of course, he was paid by the school. However, he was not teaching for the money. He's teaching the students as a part of his social contribution. So that's his contribution. He didn't need money to make a contribution because he had the wisdom or he has the knowledge to be shared with the students. Now, from that perspective, now we are talking about the Earth, the burning Earth we have now here. We have the too much CO2 emission, and the reduction of the CO2 emission is a very huge challenge, but population problem, food scarcity problem, and also water contamination problem. All these are the problems surrounding our lives because this cycle of the life is now contaminated or interrupted to the point of no return, a critical point. And then in India, the population is very much growing, and also China is growing in terms of the population. So from the Western point of view, people see it as the dangerous situation. However, as I listen to you, with China growing, with India growing, we may have a new paradigm emerging in the world. Now, this is my hope. But anyway, I will give my phone back to you.
And so, Dr. Kuroda, your expertise is in the snail's pathways inside, and related to your expertise, you talked about the relation with the culture and religion, and also things that is invisible, which side the pathway is turning inside of the snail, if it is related to the situation of the planet or the culture. There were a lot of the ideas presented, many insights were presented, and I'm looking forward very much to hear from you today for further insight. Now, for the first question about whether it is if humans are evolving or in regression, what do you think? Well, I don't think that we can separate in that way. In a certain perspective, we are evolving, and then in a certain way of thinking, we are in retrograding. So it's how you see things. And so I don't think that we can divide into or separate things, like we can't divide the earth into Asia and the other regions. So I created a new terminology: molecular and cultural reincarnation. This is a word that I created myself. So it's about reincarnation of molecules and also reincarnation of culture. If I write that in Japanese directly as a direct translation, probably it's a little too strong. That's why the Japanese expression is more like the life and culture connection. Well, my area will be is not in this area, but it's more on the natural science area. But I try to speak in a way that it's understandable to the non-experts, and maybe it will be more interesting from the science and perspectives as well. I did say that I'm going to click the slides myself, so I'll have to find out which button to press. I'm trying to go to the next slide. I don't know why it's not working. In the case that it's not moving, oh, I think it has moved. Yes, I think it's gone to the second page. So here, yes. We have the second slide. Very interesting. I have both English and Japanese. One example is about the water molecules. I think we unexpectedly, we may be able to say that we are the descendant of the first prehistoric woman in a way that never occurred to us. If I'm 60 kilograms, 2/3 of me is water. And the first prehistoric woman, it is several tens of thousand years ago when she died, and when she was decomposed, that spread out through the world, and it was uniformly distributed throughout the natural forms. So, and there was a study on trying to find out how much molecules, water molecules of this prehistoric woman is still remaining in all of us. Now, doing this calculation, if you are 60 kilograms and we still have 2/3 water, and doing this formula calculation, actually, in our bodies, there is about 40 million water molecules that is inherited from this first prehistoric woman. So we are connected. So there's 40 million of these water molecules. That is how we can recognize this point with this calculation. And then there's another example I want to share with you. So this is about the material cycles in the ecosystem. And for the ecosystem, there's the individuals, and then it creates population, there's the community and ecosystem. And non-living things like water, CO2, rocks, minerals, everything is included in an ecosystem. And if you go to the right-hand side, the plants, herbivores will eat the plants, and then the carnivores will eat the herbivores. Then the energy and the materials will be moving around the planet. But there's excrement and then become corpse and be decomposed into with the microorganism, bacteria, and other decomposers. It will all be decomposed and becoming the nutrition, and also with the solar energy and thermal energy, plants are created again. It's all circulated, and CO2 will be also emitted from all of these stages. So it might be different O2, CO2, but it's all connected. So it's like the life being going around and around. And one thing, important thing, is that this is not all the same thing just circulating the planet. It goes through changes as it circulates the cycle of life and death. Now here, Professor Svante Pääbo, what he said is that in all of us, there is the Neanderthal. And what does he mean by the Neanderthal existing in us? Looking at the next slide. What he did is that Neanderthal is a place in Germany. So there was a bone fragment obtained from this Neanderthal place. And it's very difficult to obtain the bone fragment and do this study. And then he also got a finger bone from a Denisova cave and extracted the DNA from both of these locations, both of these bones. And about 7 million years ago, when we divided from the chimpanzees and Homo sapiens, so at this point that we have diverted, he found out that the genes has been passed on. In other words, Homo sapiens was born in Africa, and then they migrated out of Africa, and there was this interbreeding occurring. And so in all of us, there's about 1 or 2% of genomes of Neanderthals, and Denisovans also, there was the interbreeding with them too. So 1 to 2% Denisovans genomes do exist in of us too. And in Denisovans in Melanesia, there's about 4 or 6% of the Denisovans genomes in and people living in Tibet, where there is less oxygen. In order to adapt to the environment, EPS1, there's this genome that called that, and that comes from the Denisovans. That is what we found. And after COVID-19 hit our planet, there is the immune system, but it went through this system and had an allergic reaction. And then there is this what the we've also, in order to fight these viruses, so what is fighting with the viruses comes from the Neanderthals. So we are all connected, and it's not that all the same things, the same substances are cycling. It does change, but it is connected, and it is still existing in all of us. I wanted to show that connection by with going through change at the same time. And here, endosymbiotics is what is depicted here. In our body, we have the mitochondria and also the chloroplast. But originally, chloroplasts and mitochondria, they were separate living independently. Prokaryotes separately living, but was taken in and started to coexist with other organisms. And the chloroplast in all of us does not create plants, but for the mitochondria, made a energy change, and it is helping to do the energy support the energy chain. If we don't have the mitochondria, then we won't be able to create energy in our body. And I said that there is 40,000 water molecules in us, and there is the bioorganisms that do the decomposition, and also there is the new there's a digestion and synthesis and decomposition, and the DNA sometimes it will be lost, or it will be mutated, and then there will be a certain cells that won't be able to live on anymore. And when you look at these molecular activities, I think it's very similar with cultural activities, myths, religions, legends, and traditions, the things that are before religions is, I think, all connected. That is my idea. And here is the Kompura deity, Kompura, that is worshipped. Originally, it comes from the Hindu crocodile god Kumbira, and there is a crocodile that is called Kumpura, and this Kumpura deity is derived from the Kumbira from India, and then it is also does appear in the Shinto religions too. So this here is another connection between the different countries. And you know the Kishibojin, the goddess of children. But originally, this deity used to, before becoming a deity, used to eat other people's children. The deity was a mother of 500 children, and before becoming a deity, she always caught others' children and ate them. So Buddha hid her youngest and favorite child to let her know how the other mothers are suffering, losing their child. And then she started to believe Buddhism and became the good deity. This is also connected to from coming in from other sources. So, and then the Celtic culture also, it is about the connection of how the people and nature is connected. And one example will be Enya's music. When you hear that music, it gives you a kind of feeling of sympathizing and a unity of people and the environment. And the Rig Veda. Whatever I dig from thee, O earth, may that have quick recovery again. O purifier, may we not injure the vitals or thy heart. Do not harm the environment, do not harm the water and the flora. Earth is my mother, I am her son. May the waters remain fresh, do not harm the waters. Tranquility be to the atmosphere, to the earth, to the waters, to the crops and vegetation. This is a 12th century BC that was created, and its next is SDGs. I was also the advisor to Director General Pan. So it was the advisory committee to the UN when the UN was drafting this as SDGs. Yes, at that time we talked about planetary boundaries, and there are two things that is said that we've already gone over the planetary boundaries. It's phosphorus, nitrogen substances, and also the genetic diversity. Climate change is a grave issue. However, climate change under this category has not gone over the planetary boundaries, but this will be the base of the SDGs. And then my final slide. Well, we are different, but we are also the same. Like molecules and cultures, how they circulate and propagate while changing, that is how the world was created and connected into us. So I think that because we have a common ground, we can work together and must work together to achieve the SDGs and not to go beyond the planetary boundaries. So I try to speak in a way that the non-scientific people can understand. Thank you very much. So it was a science-based speech, but very easy to understand for other people too. So this is something I said at the beginning too, but when we think about the energy in the space that is invisible, so and other things, if some things are not able to put in numbers, we ask a question about its existence. But in the second session, I'd like to talk about how Japan, from the leader, we'd like to hear from the leader of Japan, is Thle sensei. But what I wanted to say is that if things that cannot be created into formula or numbers that is not based on science and technology, it's kind of made into an ambiguous character. We just call it culture, myths, religion. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but that's the kind of categorization that we do. But if you think about the Edo culture in the past, also the Jomon age culture in the past, if we think about what people had, what kind of values they held, how they were living, what they tried to do, if we explore those things, we might be able to find out very interesting facts, like how all of us may be the descendants of the first prehistoric women. And when we don't know where we all started from, then we can also turn to the Hayabusa satellite. If we bring some of the soil from the galaxy, then we found that there's the amino acid actually existing in space. And our understanding was that amino acids should be a very original form of life. There's actually these forms of life that can be found. And that is also interesting too. But today, why is it that our planet is burning? Why is it that even if 50 years ago there was the warning raised from the Club of Rome, why are we in this kind of state? So now, Io-san, Dr. Io, it's your turn now. So it's now have become the way that we had predicted 50 years ago. So why is that? Why is that people cannot return or back or change the way that we led our lives? Why is it that we were not able to change? I want to clear that, confirm that. I want to make that understand that point. And maybe it's that we were too much centered around the Western culture. We were focused on the monetary values or the productivity of labor or the size of the country. The richness of the country was all measured by numbers and money. The economic measurements were maybe the most important criteria, and maybe that was the problem. And I think the first symposium was saying that it was the problem. Then after COVID, we had a temporary stop. And after this halt, in 2 weeks, CO2, temperature, it seems that it was improving just in 2 weeks. This is the experience that we had under COVID. But of course, there's people who argue that we can't stop the economy forever. And that is being shouted on right now at this, even this moment. So I'm not trying to say that Asian values are better. I just want to say that there might be things that we have forgotten, but this feeling that we are being made to exist by nature. And when we try to develop and we've tried to pursue economic growth, in the past, we have gone that path and in competition with nature. But we should make this temporary stop and we should change the direction of where we are headed toward to. This kind of insight in this short time today, we want to find the angle or where we should deepen our thoughts in. So listening to the professors for session 1, do you have any thoughts to share with us? Well, thank you for the opportunity. Actually, rather than these values forgotten, after Meiji period, when modernization came and the way that we have educated the citizens, probably there was no opportunity for us to recognize that because we were so much focused on the economic development, trying to make it be better every year, using that value of for that measurement of economic development. So what COVID made us recognize is probably something even before COVID, we were talking about it. but rather than the price and quality, ethics should be a key criteria to select what to buy or own. And that is what has been now more obvious to all of us. We did know of that, but we didn't really feel that and use that kind of metric. But even with global warming, we talk about how the sources of global warming. Also, we thought that there was the change coming from the many years of using same things. But now we're saying it is an abnormal weather we are experiencing. The temperature is really abnormal compared to the past times. And we now, it's become obvious to our eyes. That's why education needs to shift the direction and focus more on those areas. So from here, the true development will start. Development is nature should not be in contradiction. So by development, we should try to bring out the good parts. So once again, think about development as not to change the environment, but for like this parking space that used to be the original founding site for Chubu University, it's about trying to bring out the best side or best traits of that land, and also to understand that location better, what it means, and to sow the grounds, to break the grounds and develop the grounds so that it will bring out the goodness in there. So the redevelopment from a new perspective will be what is required now. And I think we can have positive expectations from here. Very cheerful topics.
In the second session, we like to add some specificity to the current discussion. Professor Hayashi in Asia is searching into the railway project to improve the economic capability, including the logistics development. And he had a project in Bangkok, and he's going to share with us his project in Asia. The development is going on in a different way than in Europe, and also Suda Sensei will talk about the complex system. We say what is good about East and what is bad about West, but more than the emotional attachment, logically, we'd like to show some of the template which can be understood by anyone in the world. So he's going to give us a very inspirational comments, maybe. And now, at this moment, I'd like to invite Dr. Komiyama from the Mitsubishi Research Institute. So Komiyama-san is a full member of the Club of Rome, Japan, and also he is the full member of the Club of Rome itself. So we'd like to hear the presentation from Professor Komiyama. Now, Komiyama-san, please, as a video.
We humankind are now in a transition stage or a turning point. To think about what this implies, I want to start by reflecting on a little bit of history. The ancestors of us, Homo sapiens, has around 200,000 years ago traveled out of Africa. Since then, we have prospered greatly as species and spread all over the world up to today and developed civilization. At the same time, our life has improved greatly. However, until the 18th century, this development has been at a snail's pace. I'd like to use a slide to show that visually. There's just one slide that I have prepared to share with you. The horizontal axis here is in units of 1,000 years. The vertical axis plots 3 indicators, which is of the planet, society, and humankind. It is apparent in this chart that until the 18th century, the evolution of human civilization was at an extremely slow pace. One of the indicators here is the global per capita GDP. Another is the average lifetime of humans. And the other is the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere of our planet. What has drastically changed this sluggish pace of evolution was the Industrial Revolution starting in the 18th and 19th century. Since then, the volume of human activity has rapidly increased, and affluence of human life has also improved together. However, the true acceleration starts upon entering the 20th century. If you look at the year 1900 on the chart, you can see the steep climb. What has happened as a result of this change is the phenomenon of saturation. In the industrialized countries, we are seeing this saturation phenomenon already with cars, buildings, etc. And also the population of these industrialized countries are also close to saturation. I believe this phenomenon of saturation is causing a very important change to the state of mind of humans today. Starting by looking at the average lifetime on this chart, at 1900, the world's average life expectancy was 31 years. From our perspectives, it is surprisingly short. And after just 100 years, this has been extended to 73 years. Of course, it will not grow and grow forever. So like the saturation with cars and buildings, it will probably saturate somewhere, maybe 19 years or perhaps 100 years. In any case, thinking that we were at 30 years, our lifetime expectancy is also becoming close to saturation. From long ago, longevity has always been the desire of all humankind. In that sense, since this desire and hope has been achieved by the majority of the population, we can say that civilization has been greatly successful. On the other hand, issues such as climate change, resource distribution, large natural disasters, stable supply of basic needs such as food, water, energy, and plus the pandemics, economic disparity, also the social divide caused by that disparity, and moreover, the most critical concern at present will be the war in Ukraine. These are the issues which are casting clouds to the future of mankind. We are facing much of these very large and difficult problems today. In other words, human civilization has succeeded enormously, but on the other hand, or as a result of the huge success, the phenomenon of saturation is occurring now and causing significant confusion. I think this is how we can portray the current state of where we stand. Given this as a background, even if the industrialized countries try to continue to push for further GDP growth and target to achieve further economic development, the general public's basic agreement to back up this direction will be no longer there. I think this is the phenomenon that is occurring now. Being aware of this problem, I am suggesting a concept of what I call the Platinum Society. This is a society that will allow the planet to be sustainable and to have the current sufficient life or affluence to be maintained. and plus enable each individual to strive for self-realization. This is my definition of the Platinum Society, and I am engaged in activities to promote this idea, to work toward that direction, and to realize a Platinum Society. Currently, more than 200 local governments are participating in this initiative. Put it in another way, if it is only Tokyo that develops and flourish, it will not be a sustainable development. If it is only the big cities that develop, at the end, humankind will lose something significant. From the perspective of land areas, 95% of land are rural areas, to speak of the extreme. Therefore, development that includes these rural areas will be indispensable. And when this kind of unified development is achieved, I think that will be the first time that mankind will be fully satisfied in the true sense. Moreover, the indicator of GDP is something that was created for countries in the developing stage. It was a great indicator to be used when life was poor and goods were scarce. We have experienced in Japan a period where GDP increased rapidly, and together with that growth, we started to eat well, own cars, etc. The GDP was a good indicator that worked well for all of us as a target. It was a good indicator while the slow pace growth period switched to an accelerated pace around the turn of the 20th century. However, things have changed. We have secured ourselves a sufficient lifestyle, and the planet is getting saturated. And this saturation is becoming more and more visible to our eyes. Under this situation, the GDP indicator does not receive the support or the empathy anymore, especially from the younger generations, as the appropriate indicator to measure human and economic activities. I think this is the background of our times and what we are experiencing today. That is why I believe that this is inevitable to the development of civilization. As a result of the civilization development, then what can fill the shortcomings of the GDP as an indicator we have used to strive for an affluent life? That answer, I think, is nature. The basic approach of the Western science and technology-driven civilization is to conquer nature. This basic way of thinking is probably approaching its limits or saturation. In contrast, Japan and other countries, like India, have cultures that is based on values to be together with nature or in fusion with nature. That has been our original set of values. We are now hearing ideas about combining the West and East. And when considering about filling the gaps of what is missing today, I believe Japan has a significant role to play today. And I must say, it's not only Japan. Various countries are exploring new values, trying to identify non-monetary values and ways to realize them. It is necessary to have various attempts, since no one knows what the correct answer is. If it is something that we can predict by using only science and technology, we will be able to come up with an answer. But if we're talking about what is it that humankind will find value in, no one can decide it today. There is no way to predict it correctly. However, it is possible to reach an agreement between people and groups of people. Therefore, like the venture companies taking various challenges with many failures and many successes, this situation of having many trials around the world will lead to an epoch-making point in the future. I don't know when, but maybe around the middle of the 21st century, like 2050. Even from the global warming perspective, I think that around 2050, it will become visible that goods on the planet will reach saturation. In many aspects, the year 2050 will become a certain target so that in the future beyond, we humans can live in a world where we can lead a colorful life with positive energy, embracing new values, and without leaving anyone behind. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Dr. Komiyama. If he was here, I would have a lot of questions for him. But can I go back to Kuroda Sensei? How were you, what are your thoughts hearing that? Yes, I also wanted to say it's not just about the material that matters, substances. You really have to have this interaction with nature. And this is what we have been talking in session 1. I think it's in line with what we're talking about in session 1. And Io Sensei, you said that we know about this, but we didn't have time to recognize it in a true sense. And now that we're seeing all of these flaws and problems coming up, then I think we are reevaluating the values that we used to hold. Our ancestors and all that prehistoric cave woman holding her 40,000 water molecules. Well, I am born in Tokyo and lived in Tokyo, but in the time of the fall season, there's a lot of festivals. There's the rice harvest season, and then there are many. I am a Christian, but we love to go to these festivals and buy the fortune papers and dance and sing together. Well, there's these things that was passed on from our ancestors, these Asian values. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but we have been nurtured by these kinds of Asian values, like you said before. So it's great. It's a great thing to become rich, but this money that we have gained, we have like we see the food and water and energy circulating around us, money also does circulate too. And in philosophy, there will be a philanthropy association in New York, for example, and there's a huge fundraising event, and all these rich American people will be donating lots of money. And that kind of culture does exist in the Western world too, but probably it's a little different for us. It's something that is more embedded in our daily lives, in our lifestyles. That's how I feel about it. Anything you'd like to say? Well, our ancestors was outstandingly feeling that they were able to exist thanks to nature. So it's not about this separation about West or East, but it's about, so like it was said, the change that we have gone through in the 19th century, how this feeling that we were being supported by nature has probably become disappeared. So I think we have to, the planet is warning us to recall how we were supported by nature. So I guess this is the time that we have to just go back to our history, try to remind ourselves and recall that experience. Thank you.
So we talked about the Neotheism, and in the Neotheism, there is a distinct culture for the economic system. So there is a contradiction or the conflict with the nature, because we destroyed nature, we make a culture out of the nature, and we civilize the nature, as we say. So that means that nature is the target of our conquering activities. So going through the dark forest, we feel so sad, but we will give the light to the black forest, destroying the Dracula or any other monsters. And then with this idea, we just had this mind set on the development. But at this moment, we shouldn't make the accessible conflicts between East and the West. Well, we say that we knew this, but we didn't have time to recognize it fully. But now we have recognition, and I think we can make ourselves available for any new types of the development. So this is the lesson from the first session, and I have summarized the first session. And now, as we say, nature calls me, you can go to the ladies or gentlemen's room during these 5 minutes. So we will have the 5 minutes break. And starting from the 5:15 Japan time, 5:20 Japan time, we'd like to start the second session. And in the second session, probably you will give us a very interesting presentation. So looking at a different phenomena, not just the reductionism, but also how each of the elements are connected with each other, will sometimes depend on the equation or the mathematical principle. So this is going to be expressed by Thle sensei. And then, as I said by the chairman, I think you are leading this organization for the emergence of the new kind of studies. So from 5:20, we will start the second session. And thank you very much for your contribution for the session number 1. This is the end of the session number 1. Thank you.
So we would like to have Taikan Oki sensei. So virtual water is very familiar for you. So the first section, we talked about what is living. And from the East Asia perspective, living means recognizing we are allowed to live. We have to eat because we will become hungry. We eat food and we intake lives and make cells. And cells will replace the energies. So mitochondria exist outside the life, but they come into our lives and we live together. We spend a long period of time sustaining lives, and because of that, we can talk, we can eat, and we can drink. So the planets support our lives. And the water plays the most important function. So today, Oki sensei couldn't come to the site, and he's a master of water, and he looks the climate from the water perspectives. So let us share his presentation. Hello, everyone. I'm Oki. I will share the screen. I will talk about global and regional climatic risk boundaries, which is about climate change and its disaster risk. The horizontal axis of this graph shows mean annual temperature, and the vertical axis shows mean annual precipitation. For example, Stockholm's mean annual temperature is 7 degrees, and mean annual precipitation is about 500 millimeter. If precipitation is increased by 3 times to 1,500 millimeter and temperatures rose to 15 degrees, can we sustain our modern life? People would think it's never possible, but that is the current situation in Tokyo. People living there are having civilized living. Therefore, it's not that people cannot adapt to such environment. However, if there's such sudden increase in temperature and precipitation in Stockholm, there is no way for society to adapt to it. This will tell us that the change and the changing speed matter in the climate change. Let's shift our focus from mean value to once in 20 years extreme values. The horizontal axis shows the highest temperature in 20 years, which can cause a heat wave. The vertical axis shows once in 20 years precipitation. The 20th century had hourly precipitation, which sometimes caused heavy floodings in 1,000 to 10,000 square kilometer length of rivers, like those in Japan. Humans were living within such CRB shown by black line. Gradation of color shows large or small population. Most people were living in the regions of 30 to 40 degrees for the highest temperature in 20 years and 100 millimeter for the precipitation. Some regions' precipitation had reached to 300 millimeter. We can see from this graph that in the 21st century, temperature will rise and some regions will see higher precipitation and the boundary will shift to red. If that happens, which regions are transgressing climatic risk boundaries of 20th century and be exposed to risk which people had not experienced? Please look at this diagram. Yellow color shows the regions where only temperature is transgressing 20th century's risk. Blue color shows precipitation, and red shows both precipitation and temperature transgressing the 20th century's people's experience. The Ganges Basin in India is such region. From Sahara to the Middle East are the regions being exposed to unprecedented climate risk, which had not seen in the 20th century or people had never experienced. Also, including Japan, people living in Korea, southeast part of China, Indochina, tropical Africa, or the Americas, Mexico, Gulf Coast, can be exposed to precipitation risk, which we have never experienced in the 20th century. However, this is a case based on the extreme scenario of 4 degrees temperature rise. In such cases, about 2.5 billion people, or 30% or 1/3 of global population, will be exposed to such climatic risk. If we can reduce the GHG emission and limit the rise in temperature to 2 degrees, about 1 billion people, still 1/8 of people, will be exposed to unprecedented climatic risk. As I said in the beginning, even the risk was experienced by some people in some regions in the 20th century. If the climatic risk is unprecedented risk for the region, it will be difficult to adapt. Let's think about this in East Asia. East Asia's CRB was here in the 20th century. CRB is shifting to here in the 21st century. It is shown by the dotted line. Sapporo is here. Sapporo is included in the 20th century CRB for 20th and 21st century. If Sapporo follows the Tokyo or Seoul's ways, for example, Sapporo can manage to adapt even global warming progresses. Tokyo is transgressing the current CRB significantly. Hanoi will have higher temperature and precipitation. However, these are still included in the global CRB. I think it is possible to adapt to extreme high temperature and heavy rain by adopting ways which other people in the world used in the 20th century. What about South Asia? In the 20th century, South Asia was included in the thick line here. If climate changes significantly at the end of the 21st century, it will be transgressed significantly. Mumbai is moving from here to here. From this, we can see that people will be exposed to very severe and extreme climate risk. Lastly, when people are exposed to extreme climatic risk, it is necessary to somehow adapt by social development. Economic or social development is necessary to this end. Also, just before this century ends, South Asia, Africa, and some regions can be exposed to climatic risks, which no one had experienced in the 20th century. In order to adapt to the situation, knowledge and technologies should be exchanged through global partnership based on multilateralism. In order to confront unprecedented climatic risk, we must work together and think very hard, make the necessary investment, and provide support to do that. I think you'll find that these are something necessary for us to do. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oki-sensei. He has a very soft and nice expression with a very soft and gentle voice. It makes us feel that we will be okay, but we are facing a very severe situations. Water circulation viewpoint, the lives itself are facing a critical situation. We have to know the fact. Oki-sensei is saying that we have to develop the technologies by circulating water. South Africa will face severe situation if we do not do that. So all the people have to be connected as one to confront this situation. Virtual water is the word which he used. Do you think Japan has abundant water, but the rice, beef, pork, industrial products, we are importing those products from the other countries. And in the process of making such products, how much water is used? From this perspective, Japan is importing a huge amount of water and using such water. This is something we have to learn. When I was studying at the graduate school, I read the theory of Oki-sensei, and he's my teacher. Now I would like to go on to Thle-sensei.
Yeah. Next is Dr. Tsuda. Professor Tsuda and myself, we were skiing together, and he used to be the professor of Hokkaido University. He's now a professor emeritus of the Hokkaido University. And in the southern part of Japan, we are climbing up the mountains with skiing, and he fell down while he was skiing. And everyone rushing to him, and we were saying, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I am okay. I am analyzing the soil and the angle of falling down using my own mathematical equation." So for him, skiing belongs to the complex system. And I have known him for more than 20 years, and he has been my mentor for 20 years. So he was invited by Dr. Iyo, going beyond the category of the academia. He is leading these emerging studies, and he's now the leader of the Center for, or the Academy of Emerging Sciences in the Chubu University. So he's going beyond the border of the academia. And so I would like to ask this question. Do you think the human is retrograding? And also, for the future of mankind, do you have any comments or the opinions to answer this question of is human retrograding? Now, it's like you're challenging me, but well, retrograding, this is the term that I have to think more. So in terms of the brain development, the brain is not evolving now. And also, we have to look at the behaviors of the people. If we ask this question, is mankind or humanity retrograding? So the brain, if the brain is not evolving, then there is no retrograding. So technology is involved. Technology is evolved, but not humankind. In your book, in the first chapter, you said that it is important for us to keep our mind pure. And he said, or you said in your book, that everything in your mind is mathematical. So complex system, chaos system, he looks over the future of mankind from the complex system and chaos system. So with or without the evolution of the brain, we have to think about functions of the brain. And also mathematically, if you look at the future of the mankind, it is still very difficult to analyze because I am not a mathematician. I am not good at mathematics, or I'm not challenging you, Dr. Tsuda. I am just simply asking this question to you. Is humanity retrograding? So please start your presentation, please. So first of all, let me explain my position. Next page, please. So here, my standpoint. When I was a child, I had this discomfort about the Japanese way of thinking. Japanese traditional way, irrational, unscientific. This traditional way of thinking of Japanese people, I hated when I was a child. So the reason I entered into the world of science comes from this sentiment to Japanese way of thinking. Now, when I was preparing for this presentation, Nonaka-san was saying to me that there is no library in the unmanned convenience store. So this explains how ethically Japanese people are good. Well, I'm not an ethical person, but I do share this idea because in Japan, we say that we are watched by the sun or the Almighty God. So without people watching you, you will never do something unethical. And this is already a part of your body. If you're Japanese, I don't know why, but it is so. So I think this belongs to the Tsujimoto-san's world. In the Edo era, there was a Confucianist teaching penetrating Japanese society, and it has a history of more than 400 years. So the penetration of the Confucianism in Japan may be the reason of ethical behavior of Japanese people. But I have a question on this point too. Now, Hantaro Nagaoka is the world-renowned physicist of the early Meiji era. When he was at the senior of the University of Tokyo, he asked this question: is the people of the East able to have the decent science teaching? And now he went to the overseas, and also he learned about the Janzi of the ancient China. In Janzi teaching, he found something logical and scientific. So Hantaro Nagaoka became confident about the way of Japanese doing the science in its own way. So this is a simple story of the Hantaro Nagaoka. And I had the same kind of experience, I should say. So Nagaoka-san's story was described by Dr. Yukawa's book. So even before I read Dr. Yukawa's book, I shared the same sentiment with Ms. Nagaoka. So what is Japanese way? There may be different opinions, but something Japanese or something Asian or something Eastern. When I was a child, I hated this, but I have to admit that there is a knowledge and wisdom in Asian society, such as in India. So, but the science or science-based thinking is something that I have to follow. As a scientist, I have to follow the scientific or science-based thinking. But in 1970s to 80s, in the world of science, reductionist idea came to the deadlock. And then the complex system science, well, there's a different definition of the complex science, but that in those days, many scientists started to pay attention to the complex system science. But those reductionist type of science, which is traditional, still very valuable, but maybe there should be an alternative idea. So From now on, I'd like to talk from the perspective of the complex system science. Now, complex system, defining the complex system is not easy. For instance, the living system is one of the complex system. And also artificial things, which are the man-made things, these are also the complex systems. So something which is created is not simple at all. And also, it cannot be reduced to the elements. So outside of the reductionist idea, when you try to understand the world, then what would be your tool? And then the answer is the complex system. The complex phenomena, the complex system should be analyzed without losing being complex. So it's easier to be said than to be done. So mathematically, many people are trying to find a way to make that happen. The complex system understood being not losing the complex itself. So I think this is the way how we see the world, besides the reductionism idea. And now in the complex system, my expertise is in chaos. So chaos to show the random system coming from the definitive theory. So in the random system, you may want to see some of the algorithm or the rules, and with those algorithms and rules, stochastic or statistical finding are behind this chaos system, as you might have anticipated. So this is what we call chaos. So the chaos from the Greek era, and also in English language, chaos sometimes means being crazy, or the chaos meaning the world state. But this chaos that I am defining now is quite different from this traditional chaos. Chaos involving both order and the disorder. So the chaos may be closer to the Greek age chaos, or the state of the almighty gods found in every nature in Japan. So when you look at the myths of each nation or each culture, you see the chaos. So chaos is found in its entirety. So chaos is the total system. You find the chaos in the entirety of each of the culture or civilization. Now, when you talk about the chaos, when you couple the chaos, the weak interactions or weak coupling will produce the resonance. And resonance is something that we have to avoid. So everyone resonate with each other to reach the same opinion. This is a very dangerous situation. So the logical way of state is away from this chaos. So everything is the same to make a resonance. This is dangerous. But and also on the other hand, a strong coupling means that everything is the same in the fixed states. So we call it a fixed state. With the strong coupling, everything goes to the fixed states. It's like the society is dying. So what we need is an intermediate coupling between the weak coupling and the strong coupling. So that's something that we need. I think what you're saying is very Eastern, Oriental. Well, I don't like to use the word Oriental, but oh, I'm sorry. But so it could be Oriental or the East, if you say so. But this intermediate coupling, intermediate strengths of coupling will produce the diversity and resilience. So in the world of science, this is the target of the research. Finding a model using this intermediate strengths of coupling is something that we are doing now. Now, because of the shorter time, let me skip. Now, the global warming we are talking about. And this is something that I want to say to you. The extreme phenomena is taking place every day. Extreme rise of temperature, extreme declining of the temperature, and also extreme increase of the precipitation, and also extreme drying all over the world for a very long period of time. In the physics, we have this phase transition idea. And if we bring this phase transition into this discussion, the current situation is that we are having so much fluctuation. So in terms of the phase transition, where you see the fluctuation, for instance, the water, depending upon the condition, reaching the 100 degrees, it will dissipate or evaporate. Now, water at the temperature of the 0 degrees, it will go to the solid state. And this is the change of the phase, or the transition of the phase. And there are other types of the transition. But anyway, so closer to the transition point, you see the larger fluctuation, and it will dissipate. Now, in the current global warming, you see a very drastic fluctuation at the time of the phase transition. And when it goes beyond the threshold, it will either go to the very low temperature or the very high temperature, or it will either go to the lots of precipitation or to the very drying period without any rain. So that's something that we have to expect. If we bring the phase transition theory into the current phenomenon. So we have to go back. We have to bring the state back to the original state and how it can be done. For instance, the human's desire has to be controlled or consumed, but people have to take time and go through training to control their desire. And on the other hand, we have the man-machine interface, or AI. By using this kind of technology, you can change the networking of the brain itself. Oh, that's a very drastic comment. So you will change the brain using that kind of technology. So I said that everything in our mind is mathematical. So changing the brain means changing your mind. So using the AI, you can even change the mind of the people, because mind means the interaction. So this kind of discussion is interaction. That means that my mind is exposed through this interaction. So something from our mind is interacting with the other people. So invisibly, you see the change. And that change has to be harnessed. I don't like to use the word control. It should be harnessed. If we can direct our transition to a better state of mind to change the people, that will be a good story. Change the mind, change the brain, and then again change your mind is the process. So without being treated, you can change your mindset. So that's the how to change part of your presentation. So harnessing the weather, harnessing the climate can be possible. However, how to control or harness your desire by changing your brain is the most difficult part. So I think I am doing my research to that direction. So how to control your desire, how to suppress your desire to a better direction. And also using the virtual reality, maybe in the virtual world, you can fulfill your desire, and in your real world, you will harness your desire. So that's very interesting. And this is the most important message. Please study mathematics. This is my most important message of today. Mathematical education, and also the mother language education. Those are very important. If you do not think in your mother language, it is going to be very tragic. So the mother language and the mathematics, those are the two important elements for you to be able to control your desire, because you have to get rid of the desire which is in excess. Now, 50 years ago, the Club Roma already gave us a warning. I am not the member of the Club of Roma, but I still think that the Club of Roma's declaration of the 50 years ago is very good. But we are not going to the direction suggested by the Club of Roma. Maybe Club of Roma should do better. And also, the vector to direct your desire. In this world, everything is going to the financial success because everything is evaluated by such indicators as GDP. So higher the better is always in your mind. For instance, if there is an index to evaluate the level of the fusion or the partnership with the other people, then that will be better. So not going beyond the phase transition, we have to bring us back to the traditional phase. Once you go over the phase, then there will be a point of no return, as some experts said. So you go beyond the phase, and after going beyond the phase, you will just fall down the water or air that we need. Already is reaching the stage where there is no point of return. But still, we see the fluctuation. So we didn't cross the phase yet. We are still before the phase transition. Still, we have the room temperature, we have the core temperature, but still we are within the phase. And we are fluctuating. Everything is fluctuating. So we did recognize that we have to go back to the original phase or the state. And for that matter, the only way to do so is to eliminate your desire. So I am an amateur, but this complex system discussion, when I was learning the complex system, I think that the people have a wish to become independent from the nature. Well, you may say that we are independent from nature, but still we are within the nature. Therefore, the Japanese traditional way of thinking, you hated, you said, but. So the control of your desire. For instance, your desire for money, your desire for independence, your desire for fame. You have to control all of these. So with lots of money, still you have to have your life. And if we have this kind of understanding, we can still go back. The Nobel physics laureate, the Black, is quoted by Tomonaga-san in his book. Now, the nature is a goddess, and the scientists are uncovering the veil which covers the nature, and the science is doing that kind of very arrogant action. So, without uncovering the veil of the goddess, which is nature, why don't we look at the nature through the veil or the cover? And this was the mentioning of the Professor Tomonaga. I think this is the essence of the complex system, I should say. Well, I felt relieved because you said that the AI can change our mind or AI can change our brain. So I felt so fearful, but I am now feeling relieved. So any additional comments from you? So mathematics and mother language education, those are most important. And also please generate new generations of the scientists. The present scientist or the present generation of the scientists made a mistake, and that mistake should not be repeated by the next generation. Well, we say that the English-speaking people are the global people, but it's not that simple in the real world. So to become independent, you have to learn from your own culture. I'm not a nationalist, but you have to respect the tradition or the experiences of your ancestors or of your culture or of your nation. So thank you very much for your comments, and let us go to the next person. So from Professor Tsuda, the life as a system or the life as a society, the reductionist theory is not good to describe these phenomena. So looking at the landscape, if everything is the same, if everyone is the same, that's a pity. So the small things start to resonate, and after resonation, people will talk about the same thing, which is also a piece of pity. Well, I think that we have learned from him a lot. Now, Dr. Abiat.
So, Dr. Apiwat, thank you very much. Professor Hayashi, please introduce Dr. Apiwat. He is now at Harvard University. It's at midnight. So, are you okay, Dr. Apiwat? Dr. Apiwat is young, relatively, and he's a very global person in Thailand. Until junior high school, he spent in Thailand. In Japan, he spent high schools and university years, and master he got at Cambridge University, doctor he got at MIT. So he's a global person. So city planning and transportation is his expertise field. So he is philosopher. He talks about people's lives. I think he talks about the value of the life. So the floor is yours. Today, I will do presentation in English. I have no confidence in Japanese, so he is also the full member of the Club of Rome.
So thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share with you. Sorry, I need to turn the mute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Right, yes.
Right. Okay, good. So again, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on one of the keywords of the symposium, future of humanity. So we now spend our lives in the VUCA world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it's driven by a combination of various factors, including rapid progress and convergence of fundamental technologies, such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, and synthetic biology. So the push forces of economic globalization of production, trade, and investment, and the pull forces of geopolitical competition and conflict that revive protectionism. These have all added complexity and volatility to the world. And of course, climate change is the ultimate force that rules them all. So looking into the future, there are three grand challenges for humanity that I think will remain for many decades, if not centuries to come. Namely, climate crisis, artificial intelligence, and inequality. So our mortal lives will be continuously shaped by the interactions of these three drivers. So in the VUCA world, as we face the three grand challenges, risks will become the norm in all aspects of life and livelihoods from womb to tomb. So any serious conversation about everyday life, as well as debate in public policy, will not be just about efficient and equitable distribution of goods and services, but also the distribution of bads and risks. As explained by the British sociologist Anthony Giddens and the German sociologist Ulrich Thle, industrial society has created many new dangers of risks unseen in previous time. And now we all live in the risk society as a whole. And as the world becomes even more VUCA, I would argue that risks will become the fundamental tenet of life and humanity. In such a world, risk management is necessary in all levels of decisions and actions, starting from the level of an individual up all the way to the global system. Risk management here is not just about avoiding and reducing risks. It is also necessary for us to think on risk as to pursue opportunities to create something better. In fact, inaction may actually be the worst option of all. Risk management could be dealt at different levels of society. At the most basic level, individuals are supposed to handle their own risk. But there are also many idiosyncratic and systemic risks that are way beyond the means and abilities of individuals to handle by ourselves. In such cases, other actors in society could play important roles. We know what the state has crucial functions in managing systemic risks, either by giving direct support to vulnerable people or by nurturing an ecosystem for individuals who share responsibility and resources. The market or the private sector could also play an important role in managing risks. For example, the insurance industry. Traditionally, communities also support one another during difficult times by helping and reducing and sharing risks. However, what seems to be missing in the conversation, at least in Thailand, where I'm familiar with, is the role of the family in risk management. Family is the basis of life, as it is the natural and the fundamental unit of society. Family is what nurtures us into what we are as members of society. Family greatly shapes our value about the world and determines our behaviors. We know that in the process of industrialization, urbanization, and for that matter, modernization, family arrangements have changed dramatically. In Japan, Thailand, and many other countries, family structures and characteristics today are very different from what they were a few decades ago. Households that are now double income, no kids or DINGs, and SINGs, single income, no kids, are becoming the norm in many countries, especially in the city. Marriage and childbearing are now postponed, while cohabitation and non-marital childbearing have increased. One could say these major changes in family arrangements partly reflect the increasing risk that individuals and families are facing each day. Many of my friends, colleagues, and students do not want to get married, let alone to have children, because they feel life is full of risks, many of which are so large and systemic that they cannot do anything to overcome. Increasing individualism in traditionally very collective societies, such as Japan and Thailand, could in part be attributed to the increasing risk we face in our modern life. With this increasing individualism, people decide their actions based on their own risk perception and self-interest. Instead of considering about and relying on others. We know that family arrangements have direct implication for resource consumption and distribution. All aspects of our living, be it housing, transportation, shopping, are greatly determined by our family arrangements. The ways our family are structured and organized could also shape not only the ways we plan our long lives, but also our intergenerational relations. If sustainability is indeed an intergenerational issue as we normally understand, then perhaps family as the first and foremost intergenerational unit of society could have long-term implications for the way we approach sustainability, both in academic and practical terms. So I suppose at this moment, the empirical research into the roles and meanings of family in resource consumption and sustainability is inadequate. In my field of urban planning, I certainly see very little reference to the role of family in the discussion of the future of cities. At the same time, public policies in Thailand and perhaps other countries have not really considered the family as an important unit of analysis and policy target for sustainability. I do not have any specific answers yet, but I have some feeling this is something we need to explore more as we think about the future of humanity and strive to create a better world, as suggested by the theme of this symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hayashi, of course, you will do the presentation later on, but Dr. Abiat is in the 50th. Yes, I'm 50 now. So the young people do not want to get married. And the first section, we talked about connected lives and circulation of lives and food, animals, people's circulation, but people will love each other and that will lead to next generation. But as Dr. Abiwat says, the modern people, due to the urbanization as a major reason, the cities planned by the mind and head, this is happiness, this is efficient. So focusing on that, even the traditional nation of Thailand, Japan, America, Europe, young people, regarding the connected lives, the men and women's relations, they think that is risky and they think it's time consumption. So this is the issue which we are facing, not only the global warming, but the connecting lives which had continued for a long time. We are now facing the problem due to that. And Dr. Abiat, what Dr. Hayashi is doing. So the 4.0, the new living, the new way of creating states, Dr. Abiwat is involved in such project. So Dr. Hayashi will do the presentation, but if there is something to add, Dr. Abiwat, please add that.
So may I start my presentation from Hayashi? I will look at the realistic side of the discussion. As I said already, economy or GDP. We were depending on GDP for evaluation, but this phenomena or this principle will no longer available. So we are beginning to recognize that. Now, the new axis of values for national and urban planning. Next page. Here is a case study. 2011, as you know, there was a great East Japan earthquake from Tokyo to Hokkaido. For 1,000 kilometers, tsunami was hitting Japan. Next page. And here, so what or how people reacted to this tsunami. Next page, please. Excuse me. One more click. And now, this is the area called Taro Town. And the more than 10 meters high tsunami was hitting this place. The green levee is an old one, and the red one is a new levee. And the new one was completely broken down, while the old one was remaining intact. This green one was designed to avoid the tsunami wave. However, the red one, using the money and technology, and with this overconfidence in technology, this red one was just reacting squarely to the tsunami. So this is broken. And next page. And now, so 1,000 kilometers coastal line, which was hit by the earthquake and tsunami. To your very left, the black area is the area where the QOL was reduced to the level of the life-threatening, and the yellow is the area where the people are gaining the normal life. A week later, 1 month later, 2 months later, you see the recovery going on after the earthquake, and so the QOL, quality of life, has been evaluated for these areas. Watching and monitoring the QOL for this earthquake-stricken area was an important project. And now, here's the message. How we secure life, and especially at the time of the emergency, the resilience at emergency is the important concept. The natural disaster, as I explained, I talked about the sea dike, and also the Netherlands had a very important concept, which we call room for the river. And up to 1970s, the Netherlands was making the dike higher and higher. However, because of the climate change, because of the possibility of the larger flood, instead of making the dike higher, they made it lower and wider to let water come across the dike. And then the area which is close to the dike was changed to the farmland where no one would live. And in Japan in 6th century, we already had this kind of project, Wai Shingen, feudal road. And in that project, the accommodation concept has been already used to make the area along the river a vacant area without any people living. And they made this area into the farmland, as was done in the Netherlands. And now COVID-19 pandemic learning. People were keeping the social distance, which is a new concept. And when it comes to the social distance, well, in Tokyo, they were living by commuting 2 hours to go to the workplace. And instead of this long commuting, to make the community more close and compact, for instance, you can live your life by going by your bicycle for maybe 10 minutes. But when it comes to social distance, many now are doing the work from home, and still sometimes some people have to go to the workplace. in any way. So this is a kind of the inequality among different types of the work style, which I am now searching into as an important subject. And next is the community bond issue. So please look at this photo. This is from 2008. I was in Shanghai in 2008 to be engaged in the residential quarter project in Shanghai. Left above, I hope you can see. In the middle, you see the playground. And this is not the playground for the child. This is a playground for the senior people. Senior people are trying to exercise their muscle. And you see also a young mother and child, and also a grandmother. So when this young mother is suffering from the busy life of being a mother, those old people will talk to her to soothe her or to encourage her. So this is how the community is built in Shanghai. And next page. So this is a kind of summary. I like the triangle, so I use the triangle here again. Now, to protect from the disaster, you have to have the sound infrastructure, which is also very important, but infrastructure itself is not enough. To make a resilient community, you have to go through these steps. Lower, you see awareness or preparedness. Each individual person must be aware and prepare for the disaster protection, the safety and security. We use these words as a package. However, if it's too safe, you will lose the security sometimes. So on your left side, you have to recognize that the people with a high awareness will allow the society or the government to make a good judgment. And then that will give us the redundancy or the resilient community. Next page. Next page. Quality of life talked about today. I'd like to refer to the quality of life. Now, the Blue Planet Prize is a famous prize which was awarded to His Majesty Wanchik of the Bhutan, the fourth king of Bhutan, for the concept of gross national happiness. That's the reason of his being awarded the Blue Planet Prize. And also, there is a Thailand 4.0 project. I like this concept of Thailand 4.0. From people for economy to economy for people. This transition is promoted by Thailand 4.0. You may say that this is not something special, but it is a special thing. And let me explain why this is special. Now, quality of life. As I said already, this is from Nagoya, metropolitan area. Where in Nagoya is vulnerable to earthquake or flood is indicated by this map. But next page, not just the physical safety, for instance, the healthcare service, your shopping opportunity, or the workplace access. These are to be evaluated by the transport infrastructure while connecting those different functions. Next page. And I will skip this, but in Singapore, we have made a survey in Singapore to understand the generational difference or the age difference in terms of how they weigh in their lives. What they need is different according to different age and different gender. Next page. Next click. So living in the same place, depending upon who you are, the level of the QOL is quite different. Next page. And so this is from Japan, which is very interesting. Now, highway, how the highway is making the lives of the people better. What kind of people are the beneficiary of the highway? Now, this new highway is going through the rural area, meaning that their access to the health is widely promoted by this highway. The next is the final page. Not GDP, but also the individual QOL improvement should be used as the index. QOL divided by per person burden on planet and society. So this is what I would like to promote to you as the indicator of the evaluation. Thank you very much. Now we have a small time, but Dr. Hayashi, now Asian perspective is the part of the topic. So Dr. Hayashi and the Abiak-san, you're doing the new project in Thailand for the new transport infrastructure. So using this as an indicator, well, you talked about the Shingen Takeda from the feudal road, and also Loom for Liber is the concept from the Netherlands to establish the infrastructure. I think this is behind the idea of the Thailand 4.0. So Thai government, JICA, are involved in this project. So from the starting from the first session, the quality of life has been used quite frequently. The quality of life is the important message of the Dr. Hayashi in terms of the civil construction and the economic efficiency. In the 21st century, the economic efficiency used to be the norm or the indicator, but the change of the indicator to the QOL is to be exemplified by the project in Thailand. So in the first meeting and the second meeting, I think we'd like to hear from you the report of the achievement that you have achieved in Thailand. So would you like to say something about this? Yes, my final page. Now, Thailand 4.0. So advanced nations and developing nations, I think the position of these nations are reversed. So civilization evolution versus the retrograding. Using the different axes, I think the position of these nations are changed or reversed. Well, the rich country are the advanced nations in the past. However, not Japan, but Thailand is the first nation to recognize the happiness of the people as an indicator to evaluate the QOL of the people. So based on this recognition, using the ICT every day, same time, every day, you go to the office in the metropolitan area. And the COVID-19 changed your style of commuting to the metropolitan area every day. Now, let me show this to you. So as BAU, you're doing the same thing every day. From the home, you go to the office and come to the phone once again. And this will make a congestion of the road. So how we can change, not just the infrastructure development. Well, I am the expert of the civil engineering or the urban planning, but what we have to do is to change the behavior or the mindset of the people using the ICT. So someone said that AI can change the mind of the people. So that's great that if that can be done, it's very challenging or provocative idea. So based upon the data and also learning from the development of civilization, which we have achieved in the 20th century, which made the Earth at the birth of the extinction. So life connection and also the value of us living in this Earth. This value itself is questioned now, and also from the global environment, the Earth is no longer able to support the lives of the people as it did in the past. So we need a new idea, alternative idea, starting from Asia. So Thailand 4.0. So this is going to be a very important concept to be shared by the members of the Club of Rome. So I think within this year, I hope that you will give us some report. 24th of December is the time where you will have the meeting organized by Chulalongkorn University, Club of Rome Japan, and Club of Rome Thailand will be the co-organizer of this symposium for the mobility issue in Asia. So that's in December. So that is going to be our third meeting as well. I think the
So now, as a conclusion for QOL, the yardstick or how we measure affluence or sufficiency, that has to be shifted. And Professor Tsuda said that it's about a desire. If we try to close our desire, maybe we'll be able to make that shift. That was kind of an optimistic way, but it's not that the society, all parts of society has to hold down the desire, but it's more about looking at the whole society. Each subsystems might will be working on its own, and then from a total system, a new system or the original system that we used to have on this planet might be recovered. That will be, I think, my conclusion for this conclusion. And there are specific countries in Asia that is making those attempts. So that has provided us great expectations, very great insights. I'm sorry we're going to the very end, but so for this whole discussion, so you've talked about the circulation, about how it's not just about eating, it's about opening yourself at the very end, at the source and on the very source of us, we have this circulation. Well, it might be a little different to what you were saying, but finally, what I'd like to say is to say it simply, it's how we connect with nature. And in order to connect, the direction is we look at what's most close to us, which is nature. What is nature? We should think about that. And also it's about our body, our physical body. Our physical body is the interface for us to connect with nature. So we have to understand, recognize our physical body and how we live. That is all connected. And that is how one way that we will connect with the great Mother Nature. One approach to recognize about your physical body. Thank you. I think it is a primitive way of thinking, but it's very important. It's something that everyone can do. And Kurila-sensei, please. Well, the planetary boundaries that I talked about, the regime shift, to say it another way, if we go over that planetary boundary, we won't be able to go back. So planetary boundary is a key word, and to look at what is happening around the world. How can we prevent us from going above planetary boundaries? So how do we come back from those fluctuations? And vigilance in science is now being more advanced overseas. How is it like it's nudging and those various new concepts that's coming up in various ways, in new attempts, the general public, the general public is feeling in many ways that about this these changes around the environment, about nature, climate change, and with COVID too. So everyone is recognizing this big change. And then this is an opportunity for us to realize that we're all living beings. We're one of the living beings, and we're connected with the non-living and the living beings, the organic and non-organic and inorganic too. So I think this kind of recognizing and brushing up our senses we are having that opportunity right now to get to that kind of awareness. Thank you very much for your final words. And so Tsuda-sensei, please. Well, when you think about your physical body, and it was mentioned as an interface with the natural surroundings. This way of thinking is very important. So we are doing multi-sensing with our physical body every day. And this interface or this sensor that we have needs to be more sensitive. It might not be training that we have to do, but I think we have to be aware of this in our daily lives. For our 5 senses, to train ourselves, the 5 senses, to open up your sensibility maybe? Yes, so, and it may sound a little different to this idea, but actually, Fujimoto sensei, you talked about the physical body, but I thought it's more about the language. Oh yes, your physical body, well, language, you use your voice. And by using your voice, it's about your physical body. And then you think using language. So language can be the physical part of physical body too. Well, I wanted to stress the importance of language. That's a new concept. So sense with your physical body and create a new word. That will determine our direction for the future. So in that sense too, the awareness of the physical body, the high sensibility is both important. Wow, I think the general public usually will not recognize it. When we talk about language, it's something about learning in your brain, and then it's separate from your body. But the voice, how you speak, it's using your physical voice, and that physical body will create your voice and word. So that's a connection between your physical body and also your senses. Yes, it's a tool. Language is a tool to connect yourself with your physical body. And probably the first language or first word came up from the connection of your physical body. Well, that part is very important. When you said something, when you surprised and just said the onomatopoeia, speaking of not the specific words but sounds, I think that was the first words that came up, and I think that connects with all forms of nature. I didn't think that Tsuda Sensei will be giving that kind of insight. Well, but AI, I wanted to speak more about AI, but that will be a separate topic for another occasion. And Hayashi Sensei, please. I think you've talked a lot, so and Trump Sensei, please. Listening to the discussion today, I think we talked about returning back to our original form. In India, what we say is that every day, today is a certain day, and every day we confirm that. So we talk about how many days has passed since this planet was born. That is the kind of concept we have traditionally in India. So if we have that kind of mindset, then every day you'll confirm yourself about your original source. Then you can think about how much you have changed, how much, what state you are. The chaos is also explained also in India. So having chaos, the people, humans recognize that about the chaos and try to think about how to return. But you have to recognize that first. That's the kind of cultural mindset. So every single individual person, that what you have to do is to confirm what today is today since the Earth planet was born. I bought that when I went to India. It's a kind of a rolled up calendar, right? And Apiwat Sensei, please, your final comment.
I believe in the power of hope. 希望が必要ですね。With the hope that humanity can do better, I think we can strive to do better.
Thank you so much. And Iyo-san, Iyo-sensei, I also think it's about hope. I think we are feeling this, that we're at the point of it's a really heavy crisis, and not about the desire that human has. I think it's about more our instinct that we need to survive, that kind of signs we are feeling. And I think that because we are recognizing that we are at a critical point of whether we can survive or not, SDGs concept has come up. And even from tens and thousands of years ago, this sustainability has been continued up to this day, but returning to that concept, reflecting about our past, it's not about retrograding. I think looking at our past is not retrograding. That is the kind of hope I felt today. Thank you so much. I do want to continue more about this very interesting discussion, but unfortunately, we're past our scheduled time. Very sorry. We're past our scheduled time. So with that, this will be the end of the symposium, the second symposium of Club of Rome, Japan. And thank you for participating from Harvard in such a difficult time, midnight. Thank you so much, Dr. Apiwat. And for what you said, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So what it's about, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we're in that kind of state now. And if we continue business as usual, we're going to be in probably a very difficult, terrible state. But I think when we review our relationship with nature, I think and there are these, as people can think about that, when we have to feel what kind of state we are in. However, if we have the hope, if every individual changes the way of thinking, if there's people who's good in mathematics, who's good in language, literature, if there are the skills, or you have the culture that you have, the belief that you have as a family, the religious belief that you have. In Japan, there is also a lot of the big topic about the relationship between religious and politics. But anyway, as your own belief, if you hold on to your belief and think about not only yourself, but to the other people, other generations, try to contribute to the other future generations and the planet, probably that is something that we have to do right now, especially the grown-ups now living on this earth right now. And if every individual recognizing that points, I think that will connect into the happiness for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for all of our panelists. Once again, thank you.